Sec, we have technical difficulties. Okay, looks like we're okay for now. So what happened was I pressed the wrong thing on my microphone earlier and I was playing around with it and I broke the cable at the back. There we go. Okay. I'm not going to touch it anymore because every time I touch it, it breaks. Can you hear me? Is everybody here? All right. Just to let you know, a few technical issues that I've been having for the past 2 days and it's still not resolved. So I'm not sure what to do about it, to be quite honest with you. Number one is the compression of the camera here might look a little bit strange. Moving around a little bit there. So now I'm all dark. There we go. Okay. So first problem. Camera, the compression is weird and it's not a setting in OBS. It's something to do with the actual camera itself or possibly, from my research, the capture card. So don't worry about that. That's the first thing. Second issue is there is a slight delay between the camera and the microphone. So there's something going on there that I need to figure out as well. And the other difficulty is that I am a bell end and I broke the cable for the microphone. So I got to get a new one tomorrow. I broke it. What can you do? Alrighty, let me have a look here. Just give me 2 seconds there now. Let me know if you guys can hear this. Not sure if you can or not. Because, oh wait, hold on. Maybe if I do this. Nope. Okay. All right. We'll figure all that out. Anyway, so I have a new channel at long last. I've been talking about it for a little while with Mrs. Demon. And so check my email and DMs. Oh, I saw that. I actually downloaded it. So I'll have to hook up with you on that. Let me see. Tomorrow during the day Ireland time, I'm super busy, but in the evening, I'll be super not busy, I think, anyway. If you want to get together in a call and we can have a look at that for sure. It's been crazy busy around here the past few days. Since I got back from America, it's just been nuts how busy it's been around the house, just stuff to do and things like that. So it's just been absolutely mental. And I was kind of feeling a bit off since I got back from America. Took me a good week to kind of get over the traveling and all that kind of stuff. So, but I'm back on track now. I was out working outside all day, riding around on the bike, doing all that kind of stuff. So I had a good time. But yeah, there was a lot of hard work to be done, a lot of heavy lifting. So anyway, a few things. Number one, we are roaring towards 20,000 subscribers. I hit 19,000, I think it was yesterday, the day before, or something like that. And we're already at like 19.1. So we're getting there. Johnny O, that is exactly what I want to do. 100%. Jesus. Anyway, what has this become? Judy Bassett in the house. Good to see you, Judy. So anyway, to cover a few things. So the first thing is the new channel. So it's linked in the side chat there. It will be linked in the description afterwards for anybody watching back. Basically, for anyone who knows me, you'll know that I am an absolute history nerd. Anything to do with history, I'm all over it. Pretty much all I watch, aside from a few things like motorbike videos and things like that, is history videos. And like when I'm out in the car and stuff, I got my headphones in, it's history stuff that I'm listening to. So I decided to do a channel called Today's the Day. And basically what it's all about is I pick the day that I'm filming on, and it won't be every single day. It's kind of every now and again, basically. Like I'm not going to set a schedule because I got a lot of other pressing things to do. But basically, the way the video works is I pick a day in history, the day that I'm filming it on. So like today's the 23rd of February. So pick today. And basically I record a video that day about things that happened on that day throughout history. So for example, yesterday's one was about Dolly the sheep, right? So Dolly the sheep was the very first mammal to ever be cloned. And so the video kind of centered around her and the history about her, where she got her name. which is really interesting, quite funny too. And to find out, you'll have to click on the link and go watch the video. That video is about 5 minutes long, I guess, and I'm kind of aiming between 5 and 10 minutes per video. So the video for today, I haven't edited it yet because I've been having these technical difficulties. So whether or not I will actually put out a video today is another thing. So we'll kind of see how that goes, really. So today's video is actually about the raising of the United States flag on Mount Suribachi. You guys will know that as the Battle of Iwo Jima. And that's actually got an incredibly rich history. So that happened today, back in 1940X. 1940 something. I can't remember now off the top of my head. But so yeah, that is actually, today is the anniversary of that particular very famous photograph, arguably the most famous photograph of all time. It's said to be the most like reused and copied photograph ever. It's interesting though, because that particular image that we all know and love of the US flag being raised over Mount Suribachi is not actually a photograph of the initial putting up of the flag. It's actually a photograph of when they replaced the original flag with a bigger one. So it's kind of interesting that, you know, you see this image of, you know, the American soldiers raising the flag, and 3 of them died actually not long after the first raising of the flag. So you see this image of the flag being raised, and in actual fact, it's the second time it had been raised, and then a new one was raised a few weeks later, put up on a proper flagpole, and it's like an official US flag or whatever. So it's really, really interesting. It's got a fantastic history, and I talk about the battle itself a little bit and things like that. There's also some other really interesting things that happened that day. So the way it works essentially is I talk about 1 or 2 you know, really important things, and I pick kind of a main topic to center the video on. But then there'll also be little tidbits of information about other things that happened on that same day. For example, today was also the day that Johannes Gutenberg printed the first Gutenberg Bible, essentially. So that was a fascinating thing in history, and something that basically opened the door to the average person being able to be educated, which is really, really cool. So American Dream 3.00 says, are all Irish people punks like Conor McGregor? I would love to hear you say that either to my face or Conor McGregor's face and see what happens. Yeah. Conor McGregor wouldn't even use you for practice, I would say. Nor would I, to be quite honest with you. So Judy, you got this, says, as is most of America's iconic photos. Wait, can you do that again? The lighting was off. Yeah, I mean, that's fair enough. Like, you know, I can understand that. Especially back in the day, you know what I mean? Like when, back in the day when, you know, cameras were not digital and wouldn't do this silly crap that you see on my screen right now. But like back in the day when you had to manually set cameras and stuff like that, and, you know, you didn't have the kind of speed or the editability that you have now, it's like, damn, like, you know, that must have been so tough to get those photos right. Like, you really had to know your trade. You couldn't just point and shoot like you can today. You really had to like look at the scene, look at the light, look at the colors, and go, okay, what settings do I need to use here? Like, it's pretty cool. And then of course, I feel like next year's one is going to have the invasion of Ukraine. That's something that I've been following very closely for the past few months. And I gotta say, just saying, I was right. That's all I can say. I was right. What happened in Ukraine is exactly how I said it would happen. A lot of people thought that it was going to be like a full-scale invasion of, you know, tanks bursting over the border, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. I knew it wasn't going to happen. No, it still could, depending on what goes on. I said it a while back that basically my first thought was that Putin would order troops to go back into the Crimea. Now, there have been Russian troops in the Crimea for the last, what is it now, 8 years? Since 2014, there's been Russian troops in the Crimea. But I thought they were going to ramp that up. And then while that was being dealt with, that they would move into the Donbass region in eastern Ukraine. I've been saying that for years, because for anybody who knows about this kind of stuff, you'll know who and what I'm talking about here. In eastern Ukraine, you have two areas of the Donbass, Donetsk and what's the other one? Jesus. Anyway, there's Donetsk and another one. I can't remember what the other one's called off the top of my head. And they have been having a lot of trouble over there for the last quite a while, actually. But basically, about 30% of those regions are held by Russian separatist groups. There are militias that are funded and supplied by Russia, supported by Russia, and directly backed up by Russia too. And so I've been calling it for years. I've been saying this for years, that it's only a matter of time before Russia put boots on the ground in that area. The problem with it is the Russian-backed separatists hold, as I say, 30% of Donbass, the Donbass region, essentially. So they hold about 30% of it. The problem is that they've declared the other 70% as an independent nation. So what does that mean? That means that basically the Ukrainians, in the eyes of the Russians, are, how would you say it? That they're occupying that particular region. That's 70% of the Donbass region. So essentially, the Russians can claim that the Ukraine is occupying what is now considered, in their eyes, a sovereign territory, which would basically give the green light for Putin to send troops into that area to secure the other 70%. So it's a really strange kind of a thing. It happened exactly as I said it would. A lot of people that I spoke to about this were like, oh, he's going to send tanks to Kiev and take over the Ukraine. And I was like, no, that's not going to happen. First of all, he doesn't have enough resources to do it. He doesn't have enough troops, and he certainly wouldn't have the backing of the Russian people to go in and do a full-scale invasion of that sort. Like, you can say that, yeah, 150 to 190,000 troops is plenty to take the Ukraine. The Russians have a huge advantage over them in terms of money, in terms of weaponry, countermeasures. They have arguably the best air defense system in the whole world. They have some of the best missiles in the world. Their new supersonic missiles are considered the best missiles to ever have been created. So, they have this huge military advantage. Problem is, Russia is a humongous country, and so is Ukraine. So securing a region of that size and having a full-scale war of that size is just completely untenable at the moment. Now, here's the thing. Here's where the heads start to butt, and you could see issues starting to arise and a full-scale war opening up. If the Ukrainians say, right, you're not having that other 70% of the Donbass region, we're moving in there to secure it. And then the Russians say, well, we're going to secure that region for our friends, the independent states. Then essentially you're going to end up with a full-scale war, not for Ukraine specifically, as in not to actually completely annex the whole of Ukraine, but to, in the eyes of the Russians, secure what they consider to be, they don't consider to be Russian territory. And that's what some people, even pundits on YouTube and stuff, have been saying, and they're wrong about that. Russia isn't claiming that that is their territory. Russia is claiming that that is independent territory of nations that they support, basically. So it's Donetsk and Luhansk, which basically makes up the Donbass region in the east. So a few things about that area. So ethnically speaking, it's still a majority Ukrainian area. It depends on how far back in history you want to go as well. That's a huge part of it that people miss as well. So it's not just about the language or the historical ties to certain areas. There's a lot of nuance to it and what the people there actually want. There was a few moves that I saw that I was like, this is it. Like, this is where it's all going to change. The first one being that the Russians claimed that the Ukrainians were shelling an area of the Donbass region, which led to mass destruction. Only problem with that is they do not possess the artillery necessary to cover that distance. So it's completely impossible that they could have done that. That's the first thing. The second thing that I saw was a video released on Russian media that I immediately I was like, there's something wrong with this, right? So it was like a little hut and it was on fire on the inside. There was a man with the bottom half of his leg missing on the ground, like, like all this. And there was like a tiny little bit of blood on his pants. There was a lady trying to help him, and I thought, oh, that's concerning, you know. And they claimed that it was basically that it was Ukrainian artillery that had done this. And the more I looked at it, the more I thought something don't look right here at all. Well, first of all, like his pants were shredded, but they were shredded as if somebody had just taken a scissors and cut them. That was the first little thing. And then when they went to carry away this recently maimed gentleman, what did I see at the end of his leg? A prosthetic. He had the connection point. If anybody knows what prosthetics look like, it's like a rounded black plastic thing with a little metal pin sticking out the end of it. So he already had lost that leg at some earlier stage. And then I saw that and I was thinking to myself, this is a serious issue. Like, this is clearly a false flag. And I know that word gets thrown around a lot by conspiracy theorists and stuff. And that's not what I'm trying to do here at all. But you look at the facts are what they are. And the fact is that this guy was pretending to have just been injured by a Ukrainian attack when clearly he already had a prosthetic leg. So then I started doing a little bit more digging and looking into this. There was a video released by the Russian parliament last week where they claimed that the Russian troops were being pulled off the front line. And it was just a video of a few tanks rolling over a bridge. And I'm like, if people actually buy this, then they are top tier stupid, because there's no way that you can look at that retraction of troops and say, I mean, first of all, who knows what direction they were going? They could have been going back for maintenance. They could have just been told, I know, right? Mind blowing. Hey lads, drive those tanks over that bridge over there while I film you. And then when I'm done, you can bring them back. It's as simple as that. Like that's all it is. As simple as that. And I knew by the movements alone that it was first and foremost a standover. If you look at the map of Europe, you have Belarus to the north of Ukraine. Then you have obviously Russia around to the east. And then down below in the bottom half of it, you have the Crimean Peninsula. And obviously the Crimean Peninsula is vastly important to the Russians because it allows them complete control over the naval operations in that whole area. So obviously they were going to take that and fortify that. So can you imagine your situation as, a Ukrainian military leader? You have 140,000 troops, very, very small amounts of arms and ammunition and missiles, essentially no early warning systems whatsoever. You have very few surface-to-air missiles, like all this kind of stuff. And you're looking down the barrel of 150 to 190,000 Russian troops with far superior numbers, complete air dominance. And then the UN turn around and NATO turn around and say, well, we'll send you some rockets. How about that? They're not going to actually send troops to the Ukraine. One way this could have ended, and it's not a feasible option, but it is an option, is that the UN and NATO allow Ukraine into NATO. Now, straight off the bat, I can tell you that would never happen because first and foremost, those massive military powers, the US, the UK, and Germany, France, all being the main ones, would look at that situation and be like, well, we're just going to say no. We're going to leave them out of NATO because if we bring them in, then we're going to potentially drag ourselves into a war. So obviously they're not going to allow that. Also, there's the history of corruption within the Ukraine. And it would be silly. It would be absolutely silly for NATO to bring Ukraine into the fold at this point, even though the Ukraine needs that support. How do I feel about the whole scenario? Well, I think strong arm tactics, gaining ground through military force, first of all, it's a breach of international law. It goes against the Minsk agreement. It goes against so many different agreements. There's been an armistice, allegedly, between Russia and Ukraine over the Donbass region for the last 8 years, yet people get killed every day for it. So it's a bit of a clusterfuck, really, to put a fine point on it. Then I watched the unbelievable display from the Russian Federation the other day where Vladimir Putin gave, first of all, he gave this very unusual kind of live feed of him grilling the high command of the Duma, which is The Duma is like their version of the Senate or their version of the parliament, basically. And he was grilling those people, man. He was giving them hell. And basically, he asked for two things. Number one was for the Duma to recognize or allow him to officially recognize the Donbass regions of Donetsk and I can never think of the second one. I just said it a minute ago. Oh my goodness. What was the other one? There was Donetsk. I always think of Donetsk because of the Donbass region. Somebody said it earlier, but I can't remember who it was. There's Donbass, the Donetsk and Luhansk. Donetsk and Luhansk, right? So he asked his parliament to allow him to officially recognize Donetsk and Luhansk as independent republics. So the People's Republics of Donetsk and Luhansk. Now, as soon as I saw that come up, I thought, well, first and foremost, they are not going to say no to Vladimir Putin. Secondly, if he officially recognizes both of those regions as independent states, then that immediately gives him the green light to move troops into those areas. And then the problem arises. Now, it was way less than I thought. I thought they were holding about 60% of that region, but they're not. They're only holding about 30%, the separatists. Now he can claim that Ukrainian soldiers are on independent nations' land, and he will go in and use force to remove them. So let me see. So far, I've been pretty spot on. And again, I do follow these things really closely. So I think it's fair that, you know, I would have a fairly good knowledge of what's going on. But here's the thing. Mark my words. This is what I'm going to suggest may happen over the next few days. And keep your eyes on it and come back and tell me that I was right. Okay? I think that over the next few days, Putin is going to give an ultimatum to the Ukraine. He's going to set out the boundaries of these new independent republics. And he's going to say to Ukraine, if you don't leave by this set time, if you don't pull back your forces, we are going to use force to push you out of these new independent nations, which would be a perfect pretext to war. And it works to his favor either way. Because if they accept and they move out, then he's gathered, because, okay, they're independent republics, but let's face it, they're going to be completely under the boot of Russia. That goes without saying, because it's created by Russian-backed separatists. So, of course, it's going to be. But here's the thing. If Ukraine agrees to pull out of those regions and essentially hand them over to the separatists and by de facto hand them over to Vladimir Putin, then he wins, right? Because he's won this area. If they say no, then there's a pretext to war and he can push even further into Ukraine. Then the question arises, why would he want Eastern Ukraine and why would he want Ukraine in general? That's another huge part of this. So the obvious thing here is the gas, right? So gas, natural resources in general, Ukraine has an abundance of, right? A huge amount. And when the Soviet Union fell, a lot of people forget that the Soviet Union wasn't actually just one country. It was a collection of Soviet socialist republics, right? That's literally the USSR. And when the USSR collapsed, Ukraine was a big thorn in the side of Russia because Ukraine was such a strategic stronghold, right? It was such a good place to keep all of this weaponry. So after the fall of the Soviet Union, they had a huge amount of nuclear weapons. They had a huge amount of oil and gas reserves, huge amount of weaponry, all that kind of stuff. So it was a big loss to Russia. That's the first reason. He wants the stuff. He wants the gas. He wants the oil. He wants that control, right? That's the first thing. I don't see this as a nationalistic thing. I don't see this as Putin saying, as a lot of people have done, and I feel they're really missing the mark when they say that it's him on this conquest to, you know, create Soviet Union 2.0 bullshit. Maybe that's a part of it for sure. Maybe that's a subsidiary part of it. But Vladimir Putin may be a lot of things, but a stupid man he is not. He's a former KGB agent, and he's been the president of Russia for 1,000,000 years. So, I mean, let's be real here. He's not a stupid man. The other big thing that he wants is a buffer zone. Have a look at the map of Europe, right? You've got Ukraine here. You've got Russia to the east of it. You've got Belarus to the north of it. You've got the Black Sea and the Crimean Peninsula to the south of it, right? If Ukraine was made part of NATO, you would literally have NATO on the doorstep of Russia, which is what he does not want. Because at the moment, his sphere of influence is still quite big, even though a lot of the other countries in the region are part of NATO now. So basically, he has the buffer of Belarus, which is ultimately a kind of a sub-state of Russia anyway, because without Russia, they have nothing. So they absolutely need Russia. And what's the guy's name? Never think of his name. The leader, the current leader, he's actually technically he's the only remaining proper dictator in Europe. I keep thinking Lukashenko, but Lukashenko's the Ukrainian guy, right? My head, there's so many Vladimirs, it's ridiculous. But anyway, so to the north, you have Belarus, massive buffer zone, huge amount of Russian military assets there, massive area, and just awesome spot for Putin. Now on the east, you have these two little regions separated by a thin piece of land that is still technically Ukraine. We have these two little regions right on the border of Ukraine and Russia, which are now controlled by Russia. So let's face it, he's going to fill in that middle piece. That creates a buffer there, and then you have Crimea creating the buffer down the bottom. So he's got this nice little buffer zone of Russian-backed countries that need Russia to survive right there so even if Ukraine, the remainder of Ukraine, joins NATO, he still has this huge buffer zone where he can just pack that. He can basically make those countries into a minefield to protect Russia. So that's an obvious thing that he's doing there. So all in all, what do I think is going to happen? Well, I think that, as I say, and you can mark this all down, right? I'm going to read, because I saw it here on a super chat, and a chat up further to mark this down. Mark it down and mark my words, right? In the next few days, he's going to say to Ukraine, if you do not remove your forces from what is now an independent nation or two independent nations, then we'll attack because we are protecting them and we have a right to. That's the first thing. Either Ukraine will accept, which I believe they will, because they cannot go into full-scale war with Russia. It's not going to work. They will likely give up the Donbass region, just like the Crimea situation. Now, that's not throwing any shade on the Ukrainians. I mean, you got to pick your battles. And I just feel like they don't have what it takes to be able to stand up for those regions. So I do think that they're going to lose those regions and that they will pull out. And then what happens? Well, there's two things that can happen in terms of, from the viewpoint of Vladimir Putin. Number one, Ukraine might be able to join NATO, in which case he has this new buffer zone between Russia and NATO. Number two, Ukraine doesn't join NATO, and it basically leaves them as this strange intermediary buffer zone, an extra buffer zone. He doesn't even need to invade them, because here's the thing. At the moment, they're not members of NATO. The whole world is backing Ukraine up for sure. But nobody's really putting their money where their mouth is. And I don't blame those countries for not wanting to put troops on the ground, especially countries that have been at war for years and years, right? So he knows that. But he needs to secure that. And that's what he's doing right now, I truly believe. And if they don't pull back, then you're going into full-scale war. And then there's a pretext to essentially occupy the rest of Ukraine and create a huge buffer zone. So anyway, Coolin327 for $5 says, hello, my favorite Irish brother. Thank you so much. Just joined the live and I'm excited. I never catch you live, and this is twice in a week. You made my day. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate that. And Andrew Kneedle for $1. Thank you so much. I saw you left a comment there as well that you tagged me in. Let me see if I can find it. He says, I did not stop by to hear the news, but thanks for bringing me up to date on what is happening. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. So anyway, it's gone. Everything's gone crazy, guys. I mean, like, there's the whole thing in Russia. There's the whole thing in Canada land. I have actually completely been ignoring that, right? The amount of people were like, oh, well, did you see about this whole, I can't even remember what it's called, Freedom Convoy in Canada, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, nope. I've seen it. I've seen, other pundits and stuff talk about it. Not that I'm a pundit. Other wasn't the right word. I mean, just pundits in general. And I was like, I'm not touching that. I don't care. It's too nasty, too dirty. I don't want anything to do with it. It's too polarizing. And maybe the whole Russia Ukraine thing is polarizing too. Like I've been, God, I've been surprised. Well, actually, maybe surprised isn't the right word here. Um, so because I've been following it so closely, I've been watching a lot of news coverage of it. And for the most part, it seems the vast majority of folks are backing Ukraine. And, I think it's a natural human instinct to back the underdog anyway. But most people are backing Ukraine. And then and I know some of you are going to be like, oh my God, I hate that guy. And then others are going to be like, oh my God, I love that guy. God, I forgot his name. Tucker Carlson. He had a thing up on it today, and it was like a 15-minute video, and I was about to go for a ride, so I was like, let's stick the old headphones in and listen to him as I go along. So I stuck the headphones in anyway, and I was listening to Tucker Carlson, and he started talking all sorts of shit about Ukraine, and I was like, a lot of what he said was true, right? There is a lot of stuff about Ukraine that I don't like. There's a lot of historical issues there and current issues too. Don't get me wrong, like locking up, any opposition to the leaders of the country. Just there are some human rights issues in Ukraine. There's a lot of corruption there, and that's exactly why they're not in NATO and probably won't be for quite a while until this stuff gets cleaned up. So I do have my issues with Ukraine. But all in all, he was essentially justifying the invasion of Ukraine. And I was thinking, okay, is this one of these things where if the left says breathe, you hold your breath? Is that kind of, is it just one of these things where you're literally just supporting Russia just because the opposition, as it were, support the Ukraine? And I'm like, come on, man, like, can you not think for yourself? God damn. I say this to people all the time. Like, I might say that I like to watch one particular person on YouTube, and you get people, oh my God, that means you're a Trump supporting lunatic. And I'm like, nah, it means I like that individual. I don't, you know what I mean? And that's, I'm not into that whole fucking, you watch this guy, therefore. It's like, no, I watch that guy because I like watching that guy. And yeah, so I got this from somebody a while back because I watched some videos by Tim Pool. And people were like, oh, Tim Pool's a right-wing psychotic, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. Like, I enjoyed watching this particular video on these particular topics he was covering. I can't really watch Tim Pool anymore. I don't know. I do feel like he's gone further to the right, and that's his business. Like, I don't care if he's on the right or on the left. I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care. I live in Ireland, guys, right? I don't give a fuck if you're the left or the right because it doesn't apply here at all, man. Our politics here are totally different. The left and right mean nothing here in Ireland. Like, people who would be considered conservatives in Ireland would be more of the left because of the political views that a lot of them would hold, whereas their social views may be more conservative or whatever, But anyway, the thing I don't like about Tim Pool is like, somebody spilled a coffee. World War III is imminent. It's like everything that happens is like, World War III. And that's why I can't watch him anymore. Taipan says, respect and support, keep the channel powering on. Thank you so much, Taipan. I really appreciate that. Dim Tool, Timo says, Timo, let me ask you this, right? Have you ever actually watched the Tim Pool video, or do you just say that because you've heard other people say that he's X, Y, and Z? And I'm not trying to be whatever here. I'm literally just asking because I get this a lot where people say, oh, yeah, Tim Pool's a right-wing Nazi, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, really? Nah. He's a bit inflammatory. He claims to be like me, like a libertarian, like a centrist libertarian. I don't really think so, to be fair. If I'm just being honest, I think he's more center-right, probably more to the right of center-right. Alt-light, I guess, is what you might call it. Whereas then you take the likes of Tucker Carlson, who's definitely much further right. It's important to listen to all sides of issues. This is from Juju here in the comment section. It says, it's important to listen to all sides of issues. I do think people are moving to extremes, and I tend to go more left where most people are social and accepting. See, here's the thing, right? So for me, and I agree with you 100%. For me, this is what bothers me, right? So I'm not going to say any names, but there's one person that I know from YouTube, right, who I always got on with really, really well. And we were having a conversation in a far off distant land on Discord somewhere. We're having a conversation on there, and he says to me, what do you think of what was his name? God damn. Can't think of his name. What's his name, man? Jesus Christ. that guy that does the change your mind videos. What is his name? It's on the tip of my tongue. Steven Crowder. He asked me what do I think of Steven Crowder, and I said, I've seen, because I only really knew him from his stand-up. I didn't really know, like, I know he has a huge YouTube channel, he millions of views, and I know the change your mind thing. I just don't watch them because they're too cringe. And I just said, oh yeah, he's pretty funny, because the stand-up that I've seen from him was funny. Like, I'm not gonna lie and just say he's not funny because of his politics. I saw his stand-up, I thought it was funny, and I was like, he's pretty funny. Wouldn't be my kind of comedy. I don't particularly, I wouldn't say that I would be a fan of his comedy. I wouldn't pay to go see him, to put it simply. And he was like, oh my God, I can't believe you would support him in any way. I was like, hold on, I'm not supporting him. I'm not buying t-shirts here. Even if I did, that's my fucking business. I can like whatever comedy I want. You know what I mean? I don't care that he says whatever about whoever. I don't give a shit if he's a conservative Christian. I don't give a shit. I don't care. If he says something funny, I'll laugh at it. You know what I mean? And that's what bothers me about people today, man. They just rail on people because they're of a certain group. It's like, and to me and to most people, I think in Ireland, that's quite alien, because our politics, we don't have that same level of political divide that they have in the US. So for me, it's like Tim Pool, right? We take Tim Pool, for example. I had never heard of Tim Pool before COVID started. That's the only way, that's how I found out about Tim Pool. Basically, COVID started. I'll never forget it. I was standing in the dog park with my two dogs. People started murmuring about COVID. I pulled up YouTube. First video I saw was Tim Pool. Clicked on that, listened to him, and he covered that almost ad nauseum for ages. And so that's how I got listening to him or whatever. And then it started to change more into the election and things like that. And then I just got bored and I stopped watching his stuff. So I wouldn't call myself a fan anymore. Like, not that I would have even been a fan before, but I would have watched a lot of his stuff while he was covering the stuff that I was interested in. Once that stopped, then I stopped watching his stuff. I wasn't really particularly interested in it anymore. But I'm not going to rag on somebody just because their politics. I think people take that way to extreme. Like, if somebody says, oh yeah, I consider myself more on the conservative side, oh my God, you're a blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, like they can fucking be whatever they want, man. Like, Jesus, But anyway, Putin Tame, thank you so much for $5 says, love getting an opinion from your side of the pond. Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate having you here. Let me see. Coolin327 says, I agree. What you watch doesn't mean you follow their beliefs. Exactly. They say, I enjoy Ben Shapiro, but I only agree with him 25% of the time. So Ben Shapiro is an interesting one because he seems to be just everywhere at the moment, on Facebook in particular. He's everywhere. And I've watched a few of his videos. And one of the types of videos from Ben Shapiro that people seem to love and I cringe at is the Ben Shapiro destroys liberal X, Y, and Z. And then you watch it and it's like some 18-year-old school kid. And it's like, I think that like everybody should like get free, like everything. And like nobody should go to work. And he's like, well, how do you expect to get things, folks? Okay, if you don't go to work, folks, how are you supposed to get? And I'm just like, really? Like, it's a kid. And that's why I also didn't like the change your mind thing. Because it was just college kids, man. This is nothing new. College kids always think they know fucking everything. They know jack shit about jack. So it's like, why not go find a professional, somebody who really knows what they're talking about, and debate them? I would much rather see that. And he's like, okay, Fox, yeah, because if you put the pencil later, the thing, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, all right, okay. You know what I mean? But I'm trying to think what I've seen of Ben Shapiro that I liked. Not that anything necessarily that I disliked. What I did find kind of funny is when he was talking about his views on abortion. Now, it's not a subject I'm going to get into because I'm just like, oh, no way. And he was asked one question and he was like, you got to follow the science, folks. Okay, you got to, the science, folks, you got to follow the science. And then he said that the reason why he didn't agree with abortion was because of his religious convictions. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I respect his right to have that opinion 100%. And I defend that right to have that opinion. even though I might not share it with him, I defend his right to have it. But I would just question the fact that you talk about going with the science and then your reason for believing a certain thing is religion. And so that's where I just kind of be like, okay, well, I don't care if somebody's religious. That's their own business. Like I'm not religious, but that doesn't mean that nobody else can be. And also when it comes to people making decisions for themselves or their families based on religion, I respect that right as well. I think that's your own business. If you make your decisions based on what's written in your holy book, I might disagree with you. I might confront you on those decisions, but it doesn't mean that you don't have the right to make the decisions for the reasons that you feel necessary. But anyway, yeah, that's just a point about Ben Shapiro. But then again, I suppose he's not really. So he's not actually a comedian though, right? He's more of a. What would you say? I don't know. I don't really know what you call him. And that's not me being a smartass. He's not a comedian, right? Because most of these guys, I kind of go off what their comedy is. Other than that, I don't really care. Michelle says, I'm sorry, but I can't stand Ben Shapiro. Yeah, I hear with him, it seems to be he's like Marmite, you know, you either love him or hate him. For me, I'm actually genuinely, I couldn't say one way or the other. The few things that I have seen of him, they just kind of rolled off me, really. I'd be like, it seems a bit silly, but I didn't really take much notice of him, to be quite honest with you. Diane says, stick to anarchist Savsit. You'll thank me later. Problem with the UK and Ireland, they are more clueless than American woke clods. Diane, do you live in the UK or Ireland? I'll ask you that much, because I can tell you from the conversations that I have with friends regularly here in Ireland, they seem to be way more clued in than a lot of people that I see online, to be quite honest. Ireland is a very... So this is a term that I intentionally use because I think it's misappropriated by people more so on the right, to be fair, right? Which is the word based. What based used to mean and what it now means are two totally different things. I would consider myself pretty based in that I just give my genuine opinion and I do not embellish it for anybody. I don't care who you are. I will not embellish my opinions for anyone. I will accept counter opinions and I love having genuine conversations. But as soon as you start giving it all that and being like, oh, you're this, you're that, then I'm just not listening to you anymore. You're a waste of my time and everybody else's. But I love having genuine conversations with people. And that's the thing about Ireland is like our politics are very unusual compared to other countries. Like in Ireland, for example, we have Irish Republicans, right? So Irish Republicans are not the same as American Republicans. And let's say you're an Irish Republican and you support, let's say, Sinn Féin, right? Which is kind of more on the socialist side in terms of taxation and their social programs and things like that, right? So if Sinn Féin were in the US, they would be definitely considered commie socialists, right? That is exactly how, well, that's probably a bit too far, but like basically like that, right? But the vast majority of people who would support that party in their personal beliefs, as in their beliefs about, I don't know, sex and marriage and all that stuff, religion, things like that, would tend to be more on the conservative side. Whereas other parties that would be considered economically more kind of right-wing in Ireland would be more left-wing in their social thinking, in their, you know, marriage equality, things like that. Now, that being said, Sinn Féin drove forward marriage equality in Ireland and all these things. So I'm not just painting that with a brush and saying everybody's like that. Not at all. Irish people take, for the most part, take their own stance. That's the way we are. We are just violently independent. So nobody will ever tell me what I should think. You can give me your opinion and I'll either accept it or reject it. But nobody can tell me what to think. Nobody ever has been able to. Nobody ever will be able to. However, if I'm told something and I look into it myself and verify it, then I will change my view on something. So anyway, Sable Eagle. Yeah, no, you're 100% right there. Like when I was in Texas, everybody was a commie. Basically, everything to the left of I don't know, Ronald Reagan is a commie. That's basically the way it was put to me. But then again, what I would say is when I was in Texas, I was geared up because people were like, Texas is the hellhole of the United States because everybody's got guns and everybody's conservative and everybody hates everything. And I went there and nobody was like that. There was one guy that got in one of my friends' face over something they said about religion. That was the only time. Now, that being said, we rolled through a few towns where you probably wouldn't be, you know, pointing out the fact that you're an atheist or questioning people's beliefs or whatever. But for the most part, the vast majority of people that I came into contact with in Texas were extremely friendly, very genuinely based, like old school, legit based. But, you know, it is what it is. Saturday's Child said, I made an online connection with the Trumper in summer 2020, trying to have an open convo to understand. After a couple of weeks of calm discourse, he flipped the F out when I told him my husband had I'm guessing you're going to follow on to that. That's fine. But there you go, right? So this is something that I've noticed in the media, right? Where the more kind of centrist and right-wing pundits talk about how people of the left are just, they will not hear it. And like, you know, if you did this, that, or the other thing, it was like, oh, you're a commie, you're a blue hair or whatever, yada, yada, yada. But actually, what I've found is that for the most part, it's the more conservative element that I've found tends to be a bit more like, oh, I see you're just a leftist commie, yada, yada, yada. I'm like, no. Within the last few months, since I started covering different stuff and broadened my viewership quite a bit, I've noticed that for the most part, a lot of my viewers seem to be more centrist or maybe slightly to the right of center. And I don't care. That's quite frankly, I don't care where you are politically. If you enjoy my videos and we have fun together, that's all that matters to me. Obviously, extremist stuff would be a major issue for me, but generally most people aren't extremists. And yeah, so I've seen a huge difference, but a lot of this stuff that I see online, people on the left saying, oh my God, people on the right are so crazy, they're all Nazis. And then people on the left, on the right saying, oh, everybody on the left are all commie, blah, 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 blah. And then you meet people in real life, like you take out Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and YouTube out of the equation for 20 minutes, go into the real world and talk to people. Most people are just based. Most people are totally based, man. So yeah, I think most of you are probably, let me ask you this, right? I'm going to pop a poll. And this is why I want to do it as a poll, because it's, you know, you can feel free. You can feel free to just be direct and honest on the poll. I don't want to say, so I'm going to put it as left, right, and center, right? The only reason I want to do that, like, if you answer left, it doesn't mean you're like, you know, once again, I am asking you, it doesn't mean you're Bernie Sanders. And if I say right, it doesn't mean you're Donald Trump. It just means in the Overton window, as it's called, I'd be fairly well down the middle, probably left leaning to be fair, but more down the middle, I would say. Just a realist. So let me know. So that, because I know a lot of you will be afraid to say that you're a leftist, and a lot of you will be afraid to say that you're a conservative, right? What's the opposite of a conservative? A liberal. So some of you would be afraid to say that you're a liberal because you'd be afraid of the backlash you might get. Some of you would say that you're afraid that you'd be afraid to say that you're a conservative because of the backlash that you'll get. And so it'll be interesting to see, you know, with the knowledge of being completely, what would you say, able to give your opinion without people knowing who said it or whatever, then I'd like to just out of interest, just to see where people would consider themselves. And there's no hate, no shit. Here's the thing, right? The vast majority of us here are based, old school based. I know a lot of you personally who are just far left, right? So one of the most amazing people I've ever met through YouTube, politically couldn't be further away from me, right? Extremely far left. but we're still like besties because it doesn't matter that politically we're different because it's one tiny aspect of life. You know, I still love that person, respect that person, wouldn't vote for them, but love them nonetheless, right? And it's probably the same the other way around. Joshua Lee, good to see you, my friend. For 5US says, the important thing to me is that you do your research and elect people that will make change. Never vote just because you belong to a group. Thank you. You have just brought me to a very interesting point, and I've only got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to fly through this. I can't remember where, and I can't remember when. But not so long ago, to prove that very point, a trans lady went up for election in a very politically conservative area as a Republican. She used her birth name, which is still her legal name, I think, used her birth name and ran as a Republican. She was, I believe, I can be corrected, a communist or socialist, Satanist trans woman, right? And went up for an election as a white male Republican. People went in and they voted her in just because it said R next to her name. Just because it said the letter R next to her name. So to prove that point, she got elected. And people were like, holy shit, who's this person? Well, you just elected that person, you dumb shit. Go and read what the person is about, the individual. Because here's the reality of it, right? If you're a conservative, fine, I don't give a fuck what you are. But if you're, I do care. It's not going to change my overall opinion of somebody. But here's the thing, right? If you're a conservative and you go in and you vote and you only vote on somebody based on the fact that the letter R is next to their name, you don't deserve to have a vote in that situation, even though that's going to get me in trouble for saying that. But I mean, like, people need to respect their vote more. You can show the massive respect that you have for being allowed to vote by sometimes just saying, okay, I'm staying out of this one because I don't know what I'm voting for. I think that's a reasonable way to look at it. I will not vote on something. I will take the small fine that the Irish government will give me for not voting rather than vote on something that I know nothing about. And that's why I always check out who I'm voting for in local elections, because local elections are so important right across the board. But thank you so much for that, Joshua Lee. Very good point. And I have a lot of respect for that woman for doing that, because it proved a point to who would be seen as politically her enemies. It taught them a valuable lesson, but it taught everybody a valuable lesson, because you could have somebody run under one particular party's banner in an area that they know they will get elected just for that, and then go in and do completely the opposite of what they said they would do, which would come as no surprise in modern politics. Pagan Goddess, welcome to the Demon Army. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Coolin327 says, I'm a conservative. I'm not afraid of it, but I see all sides. I believe that if you can't defend your opposite side, then you don't have an opinion. I think that's a very reasonable point. It's terrible to me that both the word conservative, or the being of being a conservative, if the act of being, I don't know if it's really an act, but being a conservative or being a liberal, that people are afraid to say that they're one or the other of those two things because of the backlash they may get. And I look at that and I think, really? Like, God, like, I mean, if you were brought up Christian, Republican, generally conservative, then that's fine. But I definitely, at the same time, just to clarify, I definitely understand where people get that hatred from, because, you know, these people that have a humongously different view to you are dictating to you what you can and you can't do. That's the beauty of democracy. You know, if you want to beat the other side and you want your views and your values to be the overarching values in society, then you have to show that those values are worth getting other people to vote for. Because guess what? If people aren't voting for them, then it means that people don't respect or support those views. That's where it gets really messy. So I understand, like the abortion laws in Texas. A lot of people will freak at me for saying that I disagree with those. I often get asked about my views on abortion. It's a tough one, because it does seem that it's become this massively partisan thing where if you're of a certain side, shall we say, in politics, that you have to hold this view. Or if you're on the other side, then you have to hold this view. Bullshit is what I say to that. I have my own views on it. Maybe it's because I'm politically a centrist. But my view has always been the same. I don't like it. the thought of it is, it's horrible, and there's no easy answer to it. But I understand the necessity for people. And that's it. It's as simple as that. I don't like it, but then I have to understand and respect the fact that it's not my choice always to make. You know what I mean? Some people feel extremely strongly about it, and they'll fight tooth and nail to stop it from happening because they have a certain belief, sometimes based on science or their interpretation of science, mostly based on religion in Ireland, from what I've seen. And I understand that side of it too. So it's like a really difficult one. But that's why I love to hear other people's views on it, especially from the more extremes of politics in general, you know? Chris Jackson, thank you so much for $2 says, you are all under Moorish rule. Vessels boarded. Yeah, that's the answer. How about this? Just make me Lord King of the world, and we'll sort all this shit out. I think that's the best way to do it. Uncle Nat says, my biggest issue with the right-wingers is they seem to be blind to the level of crazy a lot of the supporters seem to have, and embarrassed it most of the time. So I can see where you're coming from, but I would say this, right? I would say that a lot of people who would consider themselves actually knowledgeable about politics as opposed to just, you know, going along with the tribe would probably say the same about people on the left. Because I have seen certain things on the left where I mean, like, are you guys even listening to what's going on? Like, you know, are you actually taking in the information, or are you just saying it because that's your team? And it's the exact same with people on the far right, or on the right in general, on the left in general. They just go along with the tribe. And I'm like, can you not think for yourself? You're calling them idiots, and you're calling them idiots. You're both idiots because none of you are taking in the information. You're just voting with your tribe. And that's no good for anything, man. Fuck that. No way, man. And that's why I don't take strong sides on certain things, because sometimes I don't feel I have the right to. I don't have the knowledge to, and that's just the way it is, you know? So, the poll, where do you stand politically? Left is 42%, center is 40%, and right is 17%. That's a pretty good balance there, actually. I figured, all right, quite a lot of people would be more in the center or to the left of center, and I think that shows really there. The Dark Canuck says the right doesn't want change and it's the only path forward. Well, the way I've always said it about politics in the United States, for the most part, conservatism is just liberalism slowed down a bit. Because, you know, ground is always given. It's just done so slowly. You know what I mean? And I think it's fair to say that the left is more open to change. I guess that is literally what progressivism is. But that being said, when it comes to the thought process of some people, not all, obviously, in fact, not most, just people on the internet for some reason, pundits and stuff like that, they are one-tracked on both sides. Tucker Carlson on one side and, I don't know, Cenk Uygur on the other side. It's just one-track mindedness, voting with the tribe. That's why I think, what's that guy's name? That English comedian, the guy what talks like that. Russell Brand. That's why I like Russell Brand. Because Russell Brand is based. He's legit based. He will call out both sides and call out the bullshit. And that's why I really like what he's doing right now. I think he is so important for politics and for society in general right now, because he calls it as it is, regardless of what tribe it is. And I really respect that, because that takes a lot of balls to stick your neck out there and know, like me, I've had days here, and I was talking to Team Skeptic about this in our live stream when I was over there. I've had days where within a half an hour, I had one guy calling me a commie lefty and another guy calling me a right-wing Nazi, all in like one gathering of sentences. And you're kind of like, really? You can't win. You can't win. But it's not about winning. It's about being honest. That's all it takes, man. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with your friends. And you'll have nothing to worry about. Anyway, lads and lassies, I'll leave you with that. Hopefully I didn't trigger anybody. Well, now, you know what? Hopefully I did. Because if you get triggered, I always say this about the internet. This is why I don't do trigger warnings, right? If you get triggered, that's your own fault. It's the internet. You're going to see shit you don't like. That's the way I always say it. Saturday's Child said Russell Brand is anti-vax. Is he not? I have no idea. I've only watched some of his stuff. Anyway, thank you so much, lads and lassies. We catch you for the next one. Have a good one, and slán.